Zon David, Nazan Nasanga, Zon Bamibo Shanga, Zon Sikan David. I'm very glad to be here. My name is Jason Baldus, member of the Eastern Shoshone tribe. I didn't want to get up here and not have any pretty slides to show, so I'm gonna try to do that real quick. And I think I can fit. Bear with me 1 second. So I don't know if it's going to pick this up yet or not. I want to start with a story. And this is a Shoshone story that talks about our relationship with ourselves and each other. Many of our stories have lessons in them, and this particular story goes back to a time when the animals could still talk with the people. And the elk, which we call Badia, had lodged a rock in its hoof. In an effort to dislodge the rock, it struck at another one and created a spark and lit a tree on fire. And the elk, realizing that it didn't need fire, thought about his other relatives. So he went to the mice and the rabbits and he said, "Do you need this fire? Could you maybe use this?" And they said, "No, we have fur on our bodies. Maybe you should ask the other relatives." So the elk went to the wolves and bears, and the wolves and bears said, "No, we have strong teeth and hair on our bodies. We don't need that fire." So they convened a council with all the animals, and they said, we should think about those pitiful ones, those two-leggeds. They can't run very fast. They don't have hair on their bodies. They get cold easy. They got weak stomachs and small teeth. And so the elk decided to give that fire to the people. And that's how we talk about acquiring fire from the animals. That also teaches us that we as human beings are pretty pitiful. That if we take away all of our materials and possessions and ideas and buildings and technology, that we are still just pitiful two-leggeds. That's an important philosophy to keep in mind as we think about our ancestors and what they fought and died for, what they believed in, their worldview, their philosophy, their beliefs and their values. Because colonization and assimilation was always a goal, to take away our connection to this place, the animals, to impose ideals and systems upon us that were foreign, like land ownership, land privatization, foreign concepts to the people who were here for not 10,000 years, Chip, sorry, I'm going to say 30,000 years. And that understanding, those beliefs and those philosophies are written in this medicine wheel. I saw a gentleman over here earlier had the medicine wheel on his t-shirt. And this is a philosophy, and it's great to hear a conversation in this room taking place about cyclical economy, moving away from a linear thinking, because that's really what the medicine wheel philosophy is. It dictates the natural laws and things that exist on this planet that are out of our control as human beings, like the seasons, the cosmos, planetary movements. Our people utilized a large territory because we moved seasonally, we moved cyclically, we moved based on the cosmos. You look up nomadic in the dictionary, and this is most often the term that we use to describe the way native people lived. And if you look up nomadic, it says wandering aimlessly. Well, there's no way in heck we were wandering aimlessly. We knew exactly where we were going and for what and when. It's written in stone. And this philosophy has implications in many areas of our lives. It's symbolic of the four directions: east, north, southwest. It's also symbolic of our own individual growth and development from baby to youth to adult to elder. It's also symbolic in our growth and development as human beings and to find balance mentally, physically, spiritually, and emotionally. As human beings, we're all out of balance. But what our people understood is that we're here on this planet for a very short period of time, and that our ambition was to be the greatest human beings that we could in this small time that we have. We were acute observers of nature. We realized that generosity is something that we see all around us. Compassion and empathy. These are the foundations of our ceremonial belief systems, which were outlawed by the federal government up until only 40 years ago. So to be able to carry on these belief systems and these values, it's very important that we think in a cyclical way, circular, as opposed to linear. When we think about linear, we see left and right, we see beginning and end. And if we had a circular type of a philosophy that we could incorporate, whether it's in the town of Jackson and reusing things like they do in Scandinavia, or thinking more about our neighbors and our relatives around us. When we say relatives, in our language, it's Damot Nero Wura in Shoshone, or it's Besihi Neitaena in Arapaho. When we say all our relatives, we're not just talking about our moms and dads and brothers and sisters. We're talking about the four-leggeds, the winged ones, the ones that swim, the ones that crawl above and below the ground, because those are the things that we live here with. Creator, you want to call him God, Allah. We all have some belief in a higher power that placed us here all together in this beautiful place. There's over 574 federally recognized tribes that all have very beautiful places on this place that we call Turtle Island. There's been over 800 treaties made with the federal government, 400 of them ratified by Congress, but every single treaty broken or violated in some form or fashion. Another term that if you look up in the dictionary says supreme law of the land. So how are these treaties supreme law of the land if they were all broken? This is a map of the 1863 treaty, superimposed with the modern day state boundaries. Salt Lake City is included, Jackson's included, Pocatello. Only 5 years later, with westward expansion, was reduced by 41 million acres. So when we think about traditional territory, we think about broken promises, we have to acknowledge this history. We have to talk about it. It's not to shame or guilt anybody, because it wasn't anyone in this room that did this. But we have to acknowledge that history. Exploitation, gold, coal, steel, resulted in loss of land. Water, loss of land. Ceding of our reservations for homesteading, agricultural development, livestock, resource exploitation. This was our map, this was our reservation in 1906. Fortunately, some of those lands were returned. Many people may not know that the tribes at Wind River developed the very first wilderness roadless area 26 years before the Federal Wilderness Act. A lot of the language in the Wilderness Act comes from the designation of the Wind River roadless area. In the work that I'm involved in, it's a lot about bridging Western science and traditional ecological knowledge. How do we bring those values, beliefs, and ways of knowing that exist still in our indigenous communities and bridge that with Western science so that we find common ground? Conservation oftentimes overlaps very well with traditional ecological knowledge because tribes protect water, we protect land, we protect the animals, the fish. Again, Besihi Neitaena, or Damot Nero Wura. If we look at this state Wyoming flag, we see the ghost of a buffalo, bison. If we look a little bit closer, we see that it says on that great seal of Wyoming, livestock, mines, grain, and oil. You could say that's written in stone right down there in Cheyenne. So compare this belief system and philosophy to what I shared with you about that medicine wheel. Native belief system is about holistic understanding, the interconnectedness and the interrelatedness. It's not exploitation. So where are we going? This map scares the heck out of me. This is light pollution. If we continue on a linear time frame, linear progress, are we working for the whole country to look like this? Colonization, assimilation, exploitation. We have to begin to challenge some of these belief systems and incorporate more traditional values. Draw from our indigenous relatives about how we can care more holistically for our land, the animals in the water, and each other. That story I shared with you earlier about how we acquired fire, we could talk similarly about our creation story, about how important water is. Water is life. We say, Ba Nanashunte. You know, for thousands of years, native people, indigenous people lived on this continent without poisoning the water, without exploiting the land, because our economy was based in the biodiversity of plants and animals, the ability to move around without barriers, and to have a relationship of reciprocity. We don't take without giving. And in this society, we too often take without giving. And so I want to say thank you again, Jonathan, for the opportunity to come and visit with you and provide a little bit, maybe a different perspective on our indigeneity and what value that can bring to our society today. So I want to thank you all for listening and for the great conversation today. Thank you.